Hey guys, welcome back to Daytoday Chess. This is Sabina, and I'd like to welcome you back to the week of 14th to 20th of December. We are today on the 16th, and of course for today I've prepared a really nice game, I think, between Tigran Petrosian and Anatoly Bannik, played in Riga in 1958, and if I'm not mistaken, it was a USSR championship. Let's not forget, as I keep mentioning to you, on the 14th we have seen the wrap-up of London Chess Classic, and the game of that video was the beautiful win of Magnus Carlsen against Alexander Grishuk. Definitely a really nice game worth watching. Then yesterday we have seen Mikhail Botvinnik, the 6th world chess champion. Well, at that time he was not a world champion just yet, beating Lilienthal Andor. And for today, like I said, I have prepared a game between Tigran Petrosian and Anatoly Bannik. Don't forget, be ready to enjoy a beautiful game, the game of the day that I'm going to choose tomorrow from Carlos Torre Memorial, which is starting tomorrow. And then be ready to see some nice compilation of tactics from the European Blitz and Rapid Chess Championships. And after that, in the last day, Sunday, we are going to season up our Sunday with an Endgame study explained. Who knows, it could be from Qatar, depending on whether I'm going to find some really interesting endgame. So this was the plan of this week, and let's start with today. Don't forget, by the way, to check out my website, daytodaycookingofograndmaster.com. A really beautiful recipe is, well, beautiful. You can't really say beautiful recipe, right? We're cooking, so I think it's a really nice dinner that one can have. So be sure to check my blog. Okay, so let's see how Tigran Petrosian beat Anatoly Bannik. So starting with c4, some English, right? Knight f3, knight f6, g3, d6, d4. Okay, we have seen something similar yesterday, right, by Botvinnik, just that his opponent had played c5. So, you know, a little bit different, but still, it seems that on those times, in the middle 1900s, people really liked to counterattack the center with d4 and not allow black to get too much space. At least, you know, most of the top top players and world champions really enjoyed playing with their center. Okay, d4. So I was mentioning to you yesterday that in general, when white plays d4, normally wants to play d5 and go for the space. So the usual response of black, whether it is capturing in d4 with the c-pawn or the e-pawn, the capture is the main, the most used response. But in this position, Bannik didn't really want to capture in d4. It seems. I think this would have been, you know, a possible continuation for black. Maybe g6 in this position would be okay. Of course, white can capture double black's pawns. Then think of some, you know, bishop g2, bishop g5. But the position is about equal. Additionally, black doesn't really need to play g6 immediately. Black could think of bishop d7 first, just to make sure his pawns are not going to be doubled in c6. And, you know, the position should be quite alright for black. But g6 is a good possibility as well. However, I really enjoy this position for white, personally. If you were to ask me, I would really enjoy to play this position. Petrosian captured in e5 immediately. Knight takes e5. D takes e5 wouldn't be that great because we are taking the queen. Of course, knight takes. If king takes d8, we are going to be losing some material after bishop g5. Bishop e7, little check, or even castle. Castle might be even better. The king goes to e8, and here I believe knight b5 simply is about to win a pawn in c7. So that's why d takes e5 is not a good sorry, after after king takes d8, black seems to be losing, so that's why black would have to capture with the knight here. And now still bishop g5 seems to be a good continuation. Knight d7. And what a beautiful thing is happening, right? Bishop f6. And I believe you would enjoy to play this position with white. You have a pawn up, right? You just won a pawn. And, okay, currently you have a piece down, but you're about to get it back. So in this position, white would be doing great. That is the reason why black has to capture back with the knight to make sure the knights are being traded before allowing any kind of crazy things happening in that position. So, of course, Bannik Anatoly was a really strong player in those times as well. So, of course, he captured with the knight. And Petrosian or Petrosian, it really depends on with which accent you want to pronounce his name. I was told by some people have written me in private that I should be careful with how I'm pronouncing names. So, I'm trying to pronounce them in a way more like English wise so that everybody's familiar with the name. But obviously, the name is not pronounced correctly, so I'm not even sure sometimes how names are being pronounced. My name is pronounced wrong all the time, so it's something we have to get used to with so many languages and so many accents, and sometimes people cannot really pronounce our names correctly, but everybody knows whom we're referring to, and that's the most important thing, I think. Okay, so how did Petrosian continue here? Well, I think it's quite clear. The same idea as before, right? This bishop g5. It's a really good move, utilizing the pin and the fact that black got not to castle. I mean, it's not castling anymore, right? The king is in d8. Okay, bishop e7 is the only continuation here. And now, of course, white castled. What to do? Knight d7, right? I mean, if black were to play bishop d7, I think after bishop h3, he can go home because he's about to lose a piece, right? There's no way to really hang on to that. The only possibility here would be knight g4, but then check, king takes. It's important to make this intermediate move because if you just take in g4, this would work too, but at least, black captures here, and you have to play f4 and f5, and okay, the game gets a little bit crazy. Why won't we just capture in e7? Check, king takes e7, obviously, and now we have this check. The king, it's check pawn, right? The king goes back to d8, zack zack, and now little check, and black is losing material. So, bishop d7 would not be a good possibility. How about king e8? Would king e8 work? Well, yes, it would, but like in the other line that I showed you, the c7 pawn remains unprotected, so white can simply play in this position knight b5 and win the pawn. So, really, I mean, the opening, the big mistake that seems that was done by black, we know what it was, right? To allow white to capture in e5. So, you have to be careful. This is a really important idea that you have to remember. I didn't want to mention it to you immediately, but really be very cautious about it. Okay, so let's see how Bannik tried to hold on to position a little bit longer. He played knight d7, and here Petrosian played h4. I thought when I saw this game, I was thinking that white could capture in e7 check, but he doesn't do that much. Knight d5 check, king d8. And white has the advantage of development. He's developing this bishop in h3 with tempo as well. The king is in the center. The knight is strong. But white doesn't seem to manage to be able to win anything anytime soon. There's a clear threat now. Knight f6, and then, rook takes d7, rook d1, something like that, if you find a way to defend your knight. But I can just take it immediately, obviously. So black's probably only chance to try to hang on to the position is to play f5. And probably we could try e4 here. White is really well developed and is utilizing the fact that black's king is in the center, the bishop is in c8 and has a very hard time getting out from there. So it's really, really important that you remember to be cautious about what's going on in the center, because you can just get from a position that's about equal to one where you're struggling to make a draw. So I believe bishop takes c7 would have been good idea for Petrosian, but I like h4 as well, because he's just strengthening the bishop in g5. If black would take in g5 in this position, of course we take back. And let's say black plays c6 was the idea, to stop white from getting this knight active in d5 or b5, and get a space for the king in c7 to be able to get out of the pin, move the knight, and get the bishop out. But white still maintains his advantage. Now there's h7, which is weak in this position, so maybe white could just play bishop g2, try to double on the h-file, and maintain his positional advantage. Black, however, did not capture in g5, but played f6, thinking, I'm chasing you away. Hopefully you just go back and I'll try to have some space to finish up my development. And it kind of happened like that, bishop e3, c6. But what was the idea of h4? Not only did Petrosian strengthen his bishop in g5, but in the same time he had another idea. His other idea was to open up the rook, because where is this rook going to get into play? Through the h-file. And of course, now we want to take in g6, open up the rook. Ooh, you have to be careful, you might be losing some material. So black has to play g5. I think it's quite clear. Good. How do we finish up the development? Where do we put this bishop? Well, now that the h-file seems to be closed, and there seems to be a really beautiful outpost in f5, so we are bringing our bishop out. Bishop h3. Not only do we put pressure in g7, but in the same time we're bringing the bishop towards f5. King c7, knight e4. And here black is thinking, I really need to trade this bishop. This bishop has not been doing anything all this game, just stuck there. The rook cannot get out, we really need to trade it. But where to move the knight? Well, we don't really have many good places on knight b6. And Petrosian actually traded the bishops what to do. I mean, his bishop also, it's true, I mean, it just moved one time, but it has this outpost in f5, but can't go there right now, right? And white doesn't want to give the diagonal, just play bishop g2 back, just not to trade one of black's pieces that has never moved. So you're better off trading the piece, okay? Black took back, but now you've got the f5 outpost, so you're going to try to eventually bring your knight there if you can. But first, what is black's threat? Don't forget to look for your opponent's threats. That pawn is being attacked. Since knight b6 was played, that was a threat, but of course, bishop takes c8 was an intermediate move, so black couldn't do anything about that pawn. So now we're playing b3, a very nice restricting move, keeping that knight in b6 without any place, really. The only place that it can go that actually tried to do something is d7, but it just came from there. So in this position, for black, in order to try to get back into the game and try to improve his position, he had to think of a way to get these pawns off black, because he has a dark square bishop, so he wants that bishop to do something, right? And with these pawns on the dark square, it does not do anything. So g4 had to be a move considered by black. And why do we start with g4 first? Obviously, if we play f5, we're just losing the pawn in g5. So we have to play g4 first, and then we would like, oopsie, to play f5. So, you know, this would be a really nice continuation for black, in my opinion. Now, let's see. Black played rook c to d8. This is an interesting move as well, trying to trade the rooks and hope that the endgame would be held to a draw. But let's not forget, on those times, the top players, they were really playing till the end. They did not care about anything. If they had a positional advantage, they would go for it. And so this bishop is going to be one of the positional advantages that Petrosian is going to play against. And not only that bishop, because eventually, not eventually, like right now, that bishop was traded. But that bishop, bad like that as it was or is defending the weakness in f6, and with it, once the f6 pawn is going to fall, the other two pawns. So sometimes it is possible, and you might encounter it. You see a piece that's terrible in your opponent's position, and you think that piece really, my opponent needs to lose with that piece on the board. That is true, but in the same time, if that piece is a really good defender, and with that piece on the board you won't be able to do much, then what should you do? Try to trade it and then be able to win the game. So sometimes you make those kind of trades, and this is one of those moments. If white doesn't make this move, it could have traded the rooks first. I mean, it doesn't matter whether the rooks are being traded or not. We really need to do something about this protector. So, bishop c5. This is a really, really good move. I mean, you're not thinking to make such a move to trade your good bishop against this one? Maybe why not g4? You're thinking g4 seems like a natural positional move to bring the knight to f5. Okay, you bring the knight to f5, but what does the knight really do there? That's what you have to ask yourself. How are you going to continue progressing the position without attacking anything? The bishop will move, and then what? So Petrosian thought in real ideas, attainable ideas, and that's why he played bishop c5. Rook takes d1 was black's continuation. Rook takes. Of course, black kind of has to take this bishop. I mean, bishop d8 does not even come into consideration. Simply check. King goes to c8, and I guess we could just improve the position of our bishop a little bit. Maybe bishop b4. And let's say black just goes back, says, oh, I'm just going to repeat the position. Well, you're not really repeating it because my bishop was in c5 before. So now I can just play bishop a5 and utilize this pin to win the game, c5. And d6 is going to be an outpost for another piece of mine. So anyways, black really has to make that trade. It's the best piece that he's trading after all. And here, the knight seems to want to get active, 3e6 possibly, and that is the reason why black played rook e8. Okay, good. So we traded that bishop. Now, what's going on? I mean, is white still better? Of course, otherwise he would not have traded that bishop. Knight e4, going to attack the weakness of black's. Rook e6, g4, stabilizing the weakness in f6. A very important move. And now, black played a5. I mean, it's really, black kind of has to stay and try to make sure the position is strengthened, and in the same time not allow white to do too much. Rook d3, knight d7. Okay, let's improve our position. The knight is super strong here. It's being ensured with the pawn in g4, and it's keeping this pawn f6 under attack. King c2. Bringing the king towards the center. b6 to restrict, but also maybe have some threat to play knight c5, because if black trades this knight, he will have some chances to make a draw because white has no entrance with the king in c7 and only one file opened. How is white going to progress? So, rook f3, making sure that black remains passive with the rook and the knight protecting that pawn f6. Black really needs to activate his pieces. Specifically, if he could trade this knight, it would be great. So that's why he's bringing the king towards e7, defend the pawn, and try to liberate the knight. And that's exactly what he did. But a3. He played c5 here. I personally would be considering king e7, but white had a clear threat, b4. and what to do. Whether you take or not, white is eventually going to think of opening up one file. So we might as well just trade to see what's going on. The file is opened. Black's rook has no possible way to get on the a file anytime soon, so white will get active with rook a3, rook a7, or rook b6. And from here to winning the game is just a matter of technique. So black played c5 to stop white from playing b4, king c3, king e7, rook d3, keeping the file closed. Now, although the king got to e7 and is protecting the pawn in f6, the knight does not have the opportunity to trade this one anymore because black had to play c5 to stop white from playing b4. Don't worry, white still is going to find a way to improve this position. First, improving the position of the rook. Now it's time to improve the position of the knight because in e4 it doesn't do much anymore. So we're going to bring it where? Here. Knight e6, check. Now, as you can see, black is trying to get his knight active, either in d4 or f4. What to do? Restriction. e6. Okay, knight c7. Go away, rook. Rook d1. Knight back. Black probably is thinking here, I'm going to make a draw in this position. White has no entrances. He can give me some checks, but I'll just move around and that's it. There's no way to progress. Well, are you sure? Of course there are ways. I mean, it's Tigran Petrosian. So, it's time to activate the king even more. King e4. This is the spot we're aiming for. This or this. It really depends. Check. Check. He just repeated the position a couple of times. You know how top players do. Knight f5. Check. King e8. And now a4. Making sure that the position will remain blocked. I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that rook d6 would have won the game much faster because the trade is pretty much forced, and after king d7, white is just gonna play knight here. What to do? I'm threatening to enter with the king. Let's say black just stays, king e7. This is my way of winning the game. I tricked you. I told you I want king f5, but in fact I want knight c3, d5. So white is going to be winning here. But a4, you know, is just as good. Rook d6 will be able to be played a little bit later. Petrosian just tried to maybe get more time here, or, you know, on those times they used to adjourn the game. So maybe that was his point. He wanted to adjourn just to make sure that he would check, analyze the position later with his seconds and, you know, find a way to win. But we don't know that. I have not found any kind of history about this particular game. Okay, so he just played it here, kind of cool, just repeated the position. Knight h6 check, knight f5. The knight came back to e6, and it seems like white has not progressed. And finally, the big important move of the game, rook d6. And once the knight endgames has been reached, you guys remember I have been telling you that knight endgames are pretty much the same as king pawn endgames. So if one of the sides is winning in a king pawn endgame, whether, like, just imagine that the knights are off the board, then you're definitely winning with the knights on the board too. I mean, the chances are super high. So I'm just going to play for you the end of the game. King d5 is just a super strong move, centralization of the king, and black is just in Zuzwang. The knight cannot move. The king, wherever he goes, I'm going to enter whether c6 or e6. So f5 was Bannik's choice, but all the pawns started falling now. The knight comes to d5. He didn't want to go to d5. It would have been winning anyways. He preferred to go here to get this and that. King f7. He didn't even hurry. I don't want to let your knight get active. So I think this is such a beautiful transformation of the plan for Petrosian. I mean, he just had the advantage and didn't let his opponent escape at all. And now he's just going with the e-pawn to the queen. And there's nothing that black can do to actually stop this. Again, I went a little bit over time today, but the reason is I really enjoyed this game and I really hope you did as well. Be sure to save this game if you're playing this line, and if you're playing something similar with black, be sure not to enter in this line because white is definitely much better and your king in the center is going to suffer. That's all for today. Be sure to stay tuned for more tomorrow. Thank you.